Hi guys, Vivore sent me a little 6 kilogram furnace to do a review on. Now, part of the deal of doing the review is that I get to keep the furnace free of charge. In that review, I'm going to be honest with my opinion about what I like about the furnace and what I don't like about the furnace. So it is going to be an honest review, and as I said at the end of it, I get to keep the furnace and I can do what I like with it. Alright, with that statement out of the way, let's get into the intro. Hi guys, Cam back here in the Battler Workshop and welcome. Well, we're not actually in the workshop at the moment, we're out here in my Foundry that I built a little while ago. And, well, it's actually a Foundry at the moment, it's a paint shop. I'm doing a renovation in my home at the moment, and this is where I'm setting up doing all the doors. So I've got trestles and paints and stuff at the back there. The box in front of me, it's from a company called Vivore, which I think most of you would know. They do a lot of different products, they've got a huge product range, and one of the things they do produce are small furnaces, small melting furnaces. And they got in contact with me and asked me if I would be interested in doing a review on one of their furnaces. And I had a bit of a think about it. I went back and had a look at their product range. I had a look at old reviews on YouTube and got back and said that yep, I'd be happy to do that, but I'd like to do it on a 12 kilo furnace, which is sort of more around the capacity that I want to work with here in my backyard. And they said they didn't have it in stock. Would I do one on a 6 kilo furnace? And I was sort of thinking, well, that's tiny. What can I do with a 6 kilo furnace? And I got to thinking about how I started in foundry work, and eventually went into a semi-commercial business running a foundry. And I thought, yeah, I'll do that. Let's go back to the past, back 40 years ago when I first started. And I first started with a small coke-fired furnace that I built, and I ran for many, many years doing small castings for model engineers. And I did a range of different castings for the tech school that I attended after I took on my apprenticeship. So we'll have a look at some of those castings. I actually dug them up. I found a lot of the castings and I found a lot of the patterns that I did work with many, many years ago. So we're going to go back and have a little bit of fun and do a run of those original castings that I did 40 years ago. To give you some idea of the size comparison, this is a number 20. This is what we tended to use for our foundry. Predominantly it was a size 20, and this is one I actually use for cast iron. The Vevor furnace is a number 6. That's an old number 6 that I had lying around that I still had. It measures up just a little bit smaller than a number 6, but that's a number 6. And as I said, I started with a number 4 in my little furnace. So what I'll do is, I haven't opened up the box yet, so we're going to do that. I'll lay that out on the floor and we'll have a look at what we've got inside, and then I want to have a quick look. I'll show you some photos of that very, very first furnace that I built, and we'll have a look at some of the castings that I did in that. But let's get it opened up first and we'll have a bit of a look at what we've got, and yeah, let's have a bit of fun. Alright, this is what we get straight out of the box. So we do get a nice little furnace, and it's quite a thick stainless steel body. It's quite sturdy, and I love these little lift up handles for moving the thing around. It is lined with KO wool refractory ceramic blanket, so I will be putting a refractory wash on that. No matter how careful you are, you will always rub on this, whether you're trying to pull the crucible out of the furnace with the tongs or just moving it around, and the fibres aren't too good for your lungs. They are non-soluble, so we will be putting a refractory wash on that to lock the fibres up on both the furnace and also on the lid. Speaking of the lid, so once again, that is lined with the KO wool refractory. We have an exhaust hole in it. We have the obligatory instructions, and they are quite readable actually, so I was quite happy with that. That's the number 6 crucible that came out of the box. It's a little bit bigger than the one I had, so we'll have a bit of a comparison on that. We get a fire brick to sit the crucible on in the furnace. Now we will be putting some cardboard on that to create a blackening carbon layer so that we don't stick to it with the crucible. And we get a handle that screws onto the lid, and it's good to see it's wood. It's not just straight steel. It's wood is a poor thermal conductor, so it should be ideal for that job. We get a hose and a regulator. I'm a bit disappointed not to see a gauge on this. It's nice to know what your back pressure is that you're running at, so that when you do start getting used to your furnace, you've got a bit of an idea where it does run at its optimum based on the pressures that you've got on the gauge. All right, we do get a little burner, and it's quite sturdy actually. It's out of 3mm stainless, so it's quite a sturdy little bloke, and that fits up inside there with a thumb screw. We get a gas ejector with the isolating nozzle on that, or isolating valve on that. Once again, that just fits in there. Clicks up quite nicely. The other thing you do get is a set of tongs. I'd only use those tongs for charging metal into the crucible. I certainly wouldn't be using those for lifting the crucible in and out of the furnace. If you do put pressure points on these clay graphite crucibles, you can crack them. Worst case, you can break a chunk out, and the last thing you want to be doing is mucking around with a broken crucible and molten metal. It doesn't mix. I went onto eBay and just got some cheap tongs. So they were the ones I was testing inside the furnace. That's why you can see it's a little bit black inside there. I was just playing around getting them bent to shape so that they fitted a little better. Alright, one thing I will note on this gas regulator, the connection isn't what I call a standard propane connection. This is the bottle that you'll need to get if you do go down and do your swap and goes. There's one of these ones with the thread on the outside. These are new ones coming in. So if you are running with that regulator, you will need to get a bottle that does suit that adapter. Alright, let's have a look at some of the things I will be pouring with or will be using. So obviously we've had a look at the tongs, and I've got a couple of old pouring shanks that I found. What I'll do, actually, I'll go over and get the Vivore crucible, and we'll sit that on the pouring shank. Alright, so it fits in that pouring shank quite well. You can see the difference between the one that I had on stock and the Vivore. It doesn't sort of measure up at any sort of size. I don't know where I got that one from, but anyway. That is a number 8 crucible. That's a silicon carbide crucible. These are clay graphite. All my crucibles that we used in the furnace were silicon carbide. A lot more robust, solid as a rock, but they are a lot more expensive. That's number 40. That's a clay graphite. We bought that one, but we never used that in a pit furnace. The pit furnace we used was 60s and 80s. To give you a bit of a comparison on size, this is a number 4 pouring shank, and that's what I started my original furnace with. So you can see with the Vivore unit, it's quite a bit bigger. It's going to have a lot more capacity than what I started out with, and you'll see the work that I did when I first started out and the capacity that it had. Alright, let's duck inside. We'll have a look at my little furnace. I've got some photos of it. And we're going to have a look at some of the castings that I did over the time with that initial furnace 40 years ago. Alright, let's have a quick look at the very first furnace that I built going back 40 years ago now. And that's it there. It was a fairly simple setup. I paid about, I don't know, $5 or $6 for the plans. They came in a little booklet in the mail. That was back in the day when we didn't have email. You had to do everything by mail. So that's a little plinth that the number 4 crucible sat on. It had coke that was packed around it, and the grate underneath has a series of holes in it for the air draft to come up through and heat that coke up. Had an old Hoover vacuum cleaner I picked up for $2 or $3 down at the my local Sunday market to give me the air blast that went underneath that grate. Now the castable, I spent 6 months saving up to buy 2 bags of castable. I was married, a couple of kids, mortgage on the house, paying 17.5% back in the day, and money was very, very tight. Hence it took me 6 months to save up, putting a couple of dollars away each week. So for the money that I would have paid for that castable, I would have paid the same pretty much for that little V4 furnace, and saved myself an awful lot of headache in building and experimenting, particularly with burners, to get a furnace that actually melted right. But that's what I started off with 40 years ago. That's a picture right there with the lid on. You can see in the back there, you can see that the head of that Hoover vacuum cleaner in there. And the transporter frame I got from an old bed frame from my grandmother's that I hacked up and welded together and bolted together. That's just a view of the back of it. You can see where that vacuum cleaner head was housed, and I actually had a little light dimmer switch on there that I used to control the motor speed. It worked quite well actually. In time I got rid of the coke and I built my very first gas burner, and it was extremely inefficient. It didn't work well at all, but I did persevere with it for many years and did a lot of casting with it until I started doing a lot more experimentation with burners, and came up with my own designs that were very successful. Alright, let's have a look at some of the castings that I have done with this. Some I haven't got. I'll just quickly show you some of the stuff I did that number 4 crucible. So they were compressor housings or compressors components for a 5-inch gauge loco. That's for a bloke over in Adelaide. My dad did a restoration on a 1936 BMW, and I did some of the castings on that for him that he needed. There's a little gear shift lever. I think it's a gear shift lever, but we cast up a new one in bronze for him on that. Wheel nut, I cast that one up. The decals we cast up. So if you're doing restorations and you want to be able to reproduce parts that you don't have, these little furnaces are absolutely ideal for doing that. And these are some little castings I did for my local tech school. These are little horizontal and vertical wobblers with a little flywheel, and I actually found the patterns for these, and that's what we're actually going to cast up when we do get the furnace up and going. But I did these for the local tech school for my old instructor Jerry McFarlane, and this was great for the kids to do. They got an absolute buzz out of not only making it but actually running them on air and watching them work. So I did countless castings over the years for my old tech school. Alright, let's go and look at some of the castings that I did do. I've got them laid out at the back there, so we'll have a look at those and we'll have a look at what we're going to do with this little furnace. Alright, let's go and have a look.
Right now I've got an array of small castings and patterns that I've done, and that little Vevor furnace would absolutely eat these. And those little vertical wobblers, the little horizontal ones. There's the flywheel. I've actually started machining up one. I never actually did any of these for myself. I did. I lost count of the number that I would have done for the school. Started machining that one. We did get the kids to lay them out, but then Jerry McFarlane, who was the instructor, he made up a drilling jig for the kids. So it's basically made it a bit easier, a little bit less prone to making mistakes. These are some of those compressor castings that I did. The covers for them. That's for the little wobblers there. I just cast up a stick of material, just round up a pattern for the cylinder. Now, these were a series of castings I did from a design by a guy called Austin Gray. Austin Gray wrote in the Model Engineer probably back in the 1930s and lived in Geelong up near a Fraser Street, I think it was. And some of the agricultural societies were looking for something for the kids to do to get them a little bit enthusiastic about steam and vintage paraphernalia, and they approached me and I said, well, how about I put a casting kit together and the kids can have a go at that. And that's exactly what we did, and it worked out really well. So the only preference I had on these for anyone was if you want them cast up, you've got to supply the material. So both the old tech school and the society supplied all the bronze that I needed for doing the job. Nameplates, goodness me. We did tons of these. These are award plates for sailing. Did a lot of work for boat builders too. A lot of castings that we did for the old Cuda boats, all in bronze. That's it. Ended up draft carby. I actually cast up a part that I could use as a pattern. And these are of Dad's loco, the R3770 that he did, the three-cylinder R class, and cast them in aluminium, and yeah, they come up absolutely beautiful. And that was the original of Dad's BMW motorbike, his motorcycle on the sidecar. This was the wheel nuts, well, we took it off and we used that as a pattern, and yeah, it worked out perfectly. So I've still got boxes and boxes of a lot of the castings that I did for the schools. So I dug all those out, I found them all, so that was good. Cylinder pattern for a 2-inch traction engine. Once again, that little Vevor furnace would do this fairly comfortably. A pulley for my little hit and miss model that I'm doing. Split pattern. And these are the patterns we're going to do when we get the furnace up and going. This is the vertical wobbler, and I did find the patterns for these, so I did them on a match plate. That one there's the horizontal. So I'm going to have a go at casting those up. See how we go. That was the flywheel. I made up a blocking plate for that. Just made it so much easier because we were doing so many of them. Rather than trying to set a parting line. Another thing I found too is we actually did an aluminium base for those little vertical wobblers. So we did that in aluminium, and we made a spot if the kids down the track ever wanted to do a boiler for it. Always the obligatory stock that you've got to cast up, so rather than wasting the material and pouring it off, I always poured up bits of stock. Always need bronze stock, brass stock. So that's the sort of thing you can do with these smaller types of furnaces. So as I said, if you're into model engineering, you're looking for another dimension for your hobby, consider getting into casting. It's well worthwhile. As I said, if you want to do reproductions, you're doing work on a restoration and you want parts, that little furnace is ideal. Alright, so what we'll do next is I have coated the refractory onto the furnace and the lid. I've got to give that a couple of days to dry out, so give it the weekend and we'll fire it up, and I'll pick something out of this lot here that we're going to do. And we're going to do it in bronze, so it's probably going to be the little wobblers and maybe even that little pulley. We'll see how we go. Alright guys, we'll see you then. Alright guys, we're at the business end. Get this little Vivore furnace up and going. So that's our little furnace. That's our bottle over the back there, out of the way. You can see on the furnace I've put a refractory wash on, and I've actually cured this out at 1000 degrees. I've tempered the crucible, so that's ready to go. So I ran that at about 200 degrees for a couple of hours and then brought it up to the 1000 degrees. So that's been tempered and ready to go. It should give us some good service. If you also look at the crucible, I've actually filed in a little pouring lip just to make it a bit easier to direct that molten metal into the moulds. Down the bottom there you can see I've got paper, a number of folds of paper for the carbon layer. We've got our lid sitting over here ready to go as well. Mould wise, I've got 3 moulds rammed up, so we'll see how we go with this little furnace, what the capacity is like. Now one thing, casting isn't a race. I'm not used to this furnace, I've never used it before, so I'm going to be taking my time setting everything up properly. I'll get some fire bricks down here for my pouring shank, but it's going to be a little bit of time before we're actually pouring. Safety wise, obviously, safety glasses. I'm going to have a face shield with my helmet. I'm going to have my welder's gloves on and spats. So we're just going to make sure we tarp up and protect ourselves from any little incidentals that might happen. Alright, we'll get this mounted up on the stand, and we'll get this little furnace fired up. Alright, we'll see how we go with this wind, eh? Alright, we're up and going. So I've just got some LG2 bronze in there, which is ideal for model engineering. It's easy stuff to machine. And we're just using a lot of the runners and risers that we had off one of our previous casts. As I said, we're just going to start this off slowly. We're not going to rush it. We're going to bring the head up slowly, and then we can accelerate. As you can see, it started very easily, not an issue at all. It kicked off very, very well. Alright, well I'll bring you back a little bit further on down the track when we're starting to get a bit of action happening in the crucible, and we'll see how we go. Alright, we've been running just shy of 10 minutes. 882. Starting to get a bit cherry red in there now, so yeah, it's coming up reasonably quickly. Alright, we're another 10 minutes on. Stuff over 1040 degrees. Quite nice in there. Now I do have a fair load of metal in here, so that's a fair mass that has to be heated up. Alright, we'll come back in another 10 and we'll see how we're looking. Alright, I've just got to reset my thermocouple, but we're punching up towards 1200 degrees. And as you can see now we're starting to get a melt. So things are moving along. Temperature's cracking up towards 1200 now, so this little furnace is going like a champ. Alright, we'll just get up the temperature and we'll pour it off. Alright, our metal temperature's just up over 1100 now. I want to get it up closer to 1150 to 1200. I need something into those small moulds. We're going to have to really flash that in, and it has to flow very, very well, so we have to get the temperature up. It's a good test for this little Vivore furnace. Righto, wish me luck everyone, let's see how we go. Alright, the small engine seemed to pour well. If I had another half a cup I would have got to the top of these, but we'll see how this goes. Just a little bit short, but we might be okay. Alright, we'll let these cool down over the next hour or so, and then we'll lock them out. Let's have a look at what we've got. But I must admit that little Vevor furnace, that did a great job. That brought that up to temperature beautifully. Burner was really easy to work with. So far, no issues. Let's just hope we have a successful pour, but that's not on the Vevor furnace, that's on me. Alrighty guys, let's see how well we've done. Start off with the little ones. It'll be a pleasant surprise that they've actually poured. Alright, so that's that one. I'll come and show you. I've got a very good casting there. Hopefully you can see that. That poured out really well. That's a really clean casting. Alright, we're going to get the other one, which will be the horizontal engine. There's a bit of a wire brush, but once again, we have a perfect casting. That poured beautifully. Alright, let's have a look at the big one. Now this one may be a short pour, but let's have a look. Now I did stuff up on the gating on this one. I actually cut my risers too close to the pattern, and I had to rake it through into the mould. So let's have a look. Oh yes. Might grab the tongs for this one, it's pretty hot. So once again, a very successful casting. I'm really wrapped with that. That has come up an absolute treat. Put it down, it's getting hot. Alright, so 3 successful castings. Very, very nice quality. They are all very, very clean. And they would machine up beautifully. Alright, let's go back into the shed and let's do a bit of a wrap up on this little Vivore furnace, shall we?
Alright guys, how was that? 3 successful castings out of that little Vivore furnace. Very, 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 very happy with it. I had a great day today. That was a lot of fun. It was almost like going back 35 years for me doing those little horizontal and vertical engine castings again. And I know from experience, to get those to flow into all the little pockets in those little engines, you need to be pumping up around 1200, 1250 degrees C, and that little Vivore furnace ate it, absolutely ate it. Very easy to use, comfortable to use. The burner was very easy to use, and we ended up with a very successful result in the end. Would I recommend it? Absolutely. If you're a model engineer or you've got a small hobby workshop and you want to add another dimension to your hobby, consider doing your own castings and consider getting one of these little Vivore furnaces. It was such an easy furnace to operate. The burner control was very, very easy, very comfortable to use. I had no issues with it. I consider probably starting off smaller if you're getting into this game, and start off with aluminium. Just get used to the furnace, get used to its capacity, and get used to what it can and what it can't do. If you want to consider, or you are considering purchasing one, I'll leave links down the description for you to go and click on to go and have a look. I think there's a discount code there as well, so if you want to grab that, go off and get yourself one, and yeah, have as much fun as I did today. At the end of the video, I'm going to leave a little video of a hit and miss engine. Now, I used to do a lot of casting kits for these little Rosebery hit and miss engines, and this is one that's actually running, so stick around, have a look at that. And by the way, this little Vivore furnace would absolutely eat all the castings on that little hit and miss engine. So you know, for a hobby workshop, consider getting yourself one. Alright guys, we'll see you in the next video.